Okay, Ian, I'm activating the YouTube live now. I think I need to turn it on at the YouTube channel. So that was just
Nope, we are yeah, we are live on our YouTube channel.
okay. So let me back here.
Oh, that is strange. Now I can watch it twice, once delayed by 15 seconds.
Yeah, isn't that fun?
But yeah, no, we're good. That's working perfectly.
Okay, and there's our
All right, well, this is why we get here a little early.
exactly.
PowerPoint doesn't play well with QuickTime. They really don't. It's okay.
I'm going to mute myself because Petey's chewing behind me and Rob is rattling around upstairs. So
I will sneak in a quick reminder. Today, Rob is being ordained
Yes,
in just a couple
hey.
hours. Yay!
Cool. Awesome.
It's pretty exciting.
No, you're doing the prep meeting.
I am also going to mute myself and stop my video now because everything seems to be working just fine, and I'll just mute people who shouldn't be talking as the meeting goes along.
A lot of power.
And
Maybe just mute people you don't want to be talking.
that's right. So Sam, I will at 11 o'clock, I will click broadcast, which means the meeting is live. And then once you start talking, ferret, I will disable my screen sharing. I'll stop and then you'll take over. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to start pretty close to 11 o'clock.
Yeah, so perfect. And I think if other meetings or any indication, people will continue to join, I think, as the session starts.
I agree.
I am checking my church email just to see any last minute. What are those? What's that link again? So.
Just so people know, even though the link is not live on the webinar, this all is being streamed on YouTube. Not that I think anyone's watching at this point.
There were a couple of people who said, will it be taped? And because they wanted to see it at a later time.
Yeah, so as far as I know, anything we stream on YouTube will then be saved. So you'll be able to go back to our YouTube channel and watch the webinar that we did stream at any point.
And I'm recording it as well, just to have 2 versions for posterity.
And you can download the transcript afterwards. Like the
Yeah.
closed captions end up going into a text file that you can pull out of it. And it's kind of a mess, but it's there.
Yep. And that'll record all the questions people ask as well, and record responses, obviously. Petey, be quiet. I'm going to start the meeting just in case there are any early birds who want to log in. So I'm broadcasting now. We'll be live with an audience.
Good morning. My name is Sam James. I'm the president of the parish board. And I want to welcome you to what is now our second financial town hall meeting. For those of you who did not attend last year, I'd like to give you a little bit of background. This began when the staff approached the board and said that they'd like to work with the board to bring their salaries to the UUA guidelines. Under Marion Westgate's leadership, we created a compensation task force and began looking into their salaries and what were our overall responsibilities. Immediately, two things came from that. The first was an agreement to bring their salaries to the UUA fair compensation levels within 3 years. And the second was to have a town hall meeting in May of 2020 to discuss their salaries with the congregation, as well as be able to address other financial matters. One of the things that stood out to many of us is that many people in the church do not have a real good understanding of the financial responsibilities of the church. So a second piece of this meeting is to try and bring each of you up to date with the financial responsibilities that we assume, the assumptions that we make about our monies, and how they are being spent. This is a meeting that we're going to have each year prior to the annual meeting so that we can dedicate a full hour just looking at the finances of the church, and that it will then compensate the other materials that go on in the annual meeting. Now, a couple of things that I want you to know. If you would like to use closed captioning, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's an option that says, a button that says live transcripts. If you click on that, there's another button that says show subtitles, and you will be able to follow the subtitles for all the speakers. We'd like to ask each of you to keep your devices on mute, because with this many devices in play, background noises start to accumulate and then start to interfere with the speakers. The agenda is very straightforward. Judy Ranoff is going to give you an update in terms of the ventilation project that is well underway at this point in time. Lori Graham will follow. She is the chair of the Compensation Task Force and bring you up to date with the work that's been done since last year. Then the bulk of the time will be set aside for Martha Reed, our treasurer, and Stefan Frank, who's the chair of the Finance Committee, looking at closing fiscal year 21, which will close in the next 6 weeks, and our budget for fiscal year 22. There'll be opportunities to ask questions throughout the meetings, as well as at the end. Unfortunately, with this many people engaged, we'd have to ask you to please put your question in the chat, and then it will be fielded to the appropriate person to answer your meeting. So without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Jody, and he can give you an update in terms of the HVAC project. Jody, take it away.
Hi, good morning. I'm Judy Ranoff. I'm the parish clerk, and I'm also on the property care committee, and deeply entrenched and involved with the HVAC project, which Sam mentioned is well underway. Here is a little view of the project that I'd like to share with you. That's if it works. This worked in rehearsal. Don't know why it doesn't work here. There we go. All right, thank you. Okay, and now to talk a little bit more about the project itself. And let's see, move. I don't know what is going on here. Stuff. Okay, sorry. The project consists of, to remind you all of the scope of work, it is to replace the HVAC units for the parish hall and kitchen. That's what we just saw the crane lifting onto the roof. To install a new fresh air handler to bring fresh air ventilation into the sanctuary and parlor, which previously had nothing. To restart and recommission the classroom ventilation air handler and replace the radiators in the parlor and minister's study with mini split heat pumps. This gives air conditioning as well as heating from a non-steam source. And that's just an additional thing that we were able to fit into the project that we had talked about as part of the scope originally. And then to provide new controls for scheduling all of the new systems so that we are using energy only when we need to and coordinating the HVAC schedule to the church schedule. And this was scheduled for completion in June of 2021. And the budget was approved at $308,000. So to give you an update on where we are, the parish hall and kitchen rooftop units have been installed, and they will be started up in a week from Monday, at least by the factory, and then usable and on the control system mid-June. Sanctuary and parlor air handler is getting delivered next week and being installed and should be usable in late June. There's some ductwork that has to go into the attic. And if you were to see the sanctuary now, there are holes in the slope ceiling where the registers are going to go. The classroom air handler is working. It's been checked out. It will be on the new control system with fresh air ventilation, probably mid to late June. And the heat pumps are installed. And if you drive by the church, you'll see some of that. If you peer into the bushes, there's a little outdoor condenser unit that you can see. And new controls, we're just in the final design stages for that, all the sequences of operation, calendar, and all that kind of great stuff, integration. And that'll be online late June. We'll be able to, as I said, to coordinate everything on the church schedule with these HVAC units. So in short, project is on schedule and it is on budget as of this time. So that's kind of a update for everyone at a very high level. And are there any questions? This, by the way, is one of the what the thermostats are going to look like. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can take a peek at Q&A. Okay. Are there any questions out there, Chris? Okay. Easy crowd. Well, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lori.
Thank you, Jody. And it was great seeing that video again. It really is a lot of fun. And the music, I think, adds a lot to it. So thank you both, Mark and Jody. So I'm going to discuss a little bit about where we are with compensation task force. And I'm going to attempt to show, if I can find it, our guiding philosophy, which I had a moment ago. I'll try and bring that up. but I'll keep looking for that. But just to let you know that we are building what, as Sam said, this started last year when there was a town hall meeting to talk about the budget, specifically about fair compensation. And building off of that meeting, which resulted in a 9% increase in pledges that were earmarked specifically for staff compensation, we've continued this year to meet. At the time last year, what we had committed to was getting all staff to the UU recommended midpoint within 3 years. The compensation staff task force started meeting in the fall, first with Ann Dexter, who had led the compensation task force previously, to understand what the compensation philosophy was, where the compensation task force, how it began, where they were with that, and where things were at the end of last church year. We reviewed the salaries, we suggested increases for upcoming budgets, and planned a calendar of meetings with staff, with the finance committee and the parish board. And Chris also worked on finalizing staff job descriptions, which actually helped inform our work of where we were going forward. We met as a group with the staff, all staff together in January to discuss the calendar and the budget process as it relates to both compensation and support for the programs, in the church, and to get input from staff on their concerns. And it was reiterated that a joint focus from all was how we can provide congregation with opportunities to have input and be engaged in this process and to learn more about the budget before it goes to the annual town meeting, as Sam outlined at the beginning of this. And this, of course, is one of the reasons we're meeting today. And there will be at least 1 or 2 smaller meetings later this month if people have questions. And the parish board, as Sam said, is committed to having these budget meetings before annual town meeting. Pam and Chris met with the staff members individually in March to discuss what we thought the 2021 to 22 budget would be in terms of compensations. And they asked about any open questions staff had, and to see how they felt their role was going forward and what support they might need, both individually and for their programs. And since March, as the stewardship numbers, the good news is, as the stewardship numbers have been coming in, the compensation task force and the finance committee have been really working towards being able to meet the midpoint commitment in 2 years rather than 3. And so that's sort of the winning aspect of this, is that we think we'll be able to do that, or we know we'll be able to do that. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Stefan, who will be discussing more details about this great news.
Yes, thanks, Lori. And thanks a lot for the work that you and the task force were doing. This is an important one, that we pay our staff properly, right? And I appreciate the time that went in. So let me just present a few numbers together with Martha. Good. So let's roll back a little bit. When we made the budget for financial year 21, which is the current year that we are in, that was a time we made this budget after 2 months of the pandemic. So, we just knew it's going to be a shot in the, a shot in the dark, and we are not sure, where we're going to end up. But we thought that we thought that we have to achieve the salary increase, the 9% salary increase, because some of the pledge increase came specifically after this town hall meeting where we spoke about salary. So we heard a very clear voice from the congregation that we have to tackle the salary increase even in difficult times as the pandemic, right? And as Lori just said, we were expecting to reach the midpoint for financial year 23, and this first step, the 9% for this year. When we then went through all the numbers, we saw that we will have a shortfall, which is pandemic related. And therefore, since this is a very unusual time, and this is what the stabilization fund is made for, we made a budget where we would use some of the stabilization fund for an expected shortfall. And that shortfall, we made a budget where we said this will be around 30K, which is about a third of the money that we have in the stabilization fund. So that was the plan. So let's go to the surprises. There were a few bad surprises. There were luckily more good surprises, but let's start with the bad surprises. The bad surprises were we need a new HVAC system, as Jody said, $308,000. And on the income side, even our low expectations for the offering and for the fundraisers did not come to fruition. The offering with our digital offer, with our digital services, the offering is really, really down. So we have significant money there that we no longer have. And fundraiser, we were still expecting to do some form of a musical, and as we all know, pandemic taking longer and more severe as everybody thought. So that was also a little bit of a hole there. But if we look at the good surprises, there are a lot of good surprises, and many of the good surprises have to do with you as a congregation stepping up to the plate. One of the things is that we assume that our fulfillment rate on the pledge is actually going to be lower in the pandemic with people struggling. That was not the case. We have the same high pledge fulfillment rate that we have over the years. On the capital campaign, we assumed timing and fulfillment issues, and they were both beaten by reality. So we already are. I don't know the exact number, but John said we are at a very high fulfillment level right now on the capital campaign, also from a time perspective. The pledge also has increased after the salary-focused financial town hall, so we had a very solid pledge. On the HVAC side, the capital campaign, and maybe I should use this moment to say thank you again to those folks and to the people that stepped up and gave to the capital campaign, because it allowed us. The capital campaign was in a state where we had the money pledged, but we had not completely spent it yet, which of course allowed us to redirect a little bit of the money, because the HVAC system is part of the building. So we felt it is in spirit to what the capital campaign was for. And we across the board on all of the 3-4 goals that the campaign had, we cut a little bit and could cover the HVAC together with the money that we put aside for major building replacements. So we did not have to hit the operational budget at all with the HVAC system. And last, the good side is on the cost side. We were very conservative in assuming savings there, but there were savings on utilities because the building was not used. On admin, the committees needed less money because they weren't meeting in person. They didn't have to buy things in the same way that they usually do. So if we sum this all up, right, the result was we have a state-of-the-art HVAC system. We were able to do the 9%. We're also proud that we did not need to take the PPP credit, which was doubtful anyway, because if you read the conditions closely, we would not have met them. And with all that, we will most likely stay under $20,000 deficit. So we are coming in $10,000 better than we expected, right? This is brilliant news. I think, I'm very proud on it, but we should not forget that there are a few things that we had to do, right? We still have some debt left. We have about $160,000 debt left instead of being on zero, which was one of the goals of the campaign, that we have no more debt. We could only do the most urgent long-term facility work. There was a longer list of things that we wanted to do from the capital campaign, and we had to defer some of that. And also the organ fund, is only half as much funded as we planned to, right? So I just want to remind us this was some of the cost. The building repair fund, of course, we have to build it again now that we used it for the HVAC. And also, in order to have a stable budget over the coming years, we had to restructure the staff following more the example of other congregations and go with a part-time youth assistant instead of a full-time youth director position, and therefore lost Cora. So I just want to say these are some of the negative outcomes. I still think that I'm really happy with where we ended up by and large, given the times that we have in the pandemic. Here are the detailed number, and I want to hand it over to Martha that she can explain some of the detailed numbers, and then we would stop here for questions on this year's budget. Martha?
Good morning, everybody. We have here, as you see by the titles of the columns, where we ended up last fiscal year, which ends the end of June. this is the budget for this current year, and this is where we project ours to end up. So here's what the income here on the left and the expenses on the right. Stefan had projected, or the budget rather, had projected the $30,000 of need still to come from the stabilization fund. As far as we can tell at this particular point in time, looks like we're coming in with only about $20,000 need to draw from the stabilization fund. Stefan, you want to advance the slide?
Yes. So I leave it on the numbers here so that if people have questions, then I think we leave it at the numbers. And just one little explanation, the pledge number, the current year donations that you see on the top. Yes, these are the actual pledge numbers, right? So they are deferred from the pledges coming in because we have usually a 98.5% fulfillment rate. And what you see here are the actuals, which are usually 98.5% of the pledge numbers. Good. Any questions on this year's budget and projections? Good. Then I think we can continue going to the budget or to the proposed budget for the next year. So here I can start with good news because, you know, the bad surprises haven't come yet, and I hope there will not be too many. So the good news is the pledge is up quite a bit. I don't know the exact number, but I think it was 645 or something like that, and somewhere in that order. You know, Martha?
Yes. Sorry to interrupt, guys. So somebody had their hand up. If you do have a question, if you could either use the Q&A button, so you can just click on the button that says Q&A, and you can type in your question there, or you could also do it in the chat, but it would be great to use the Q&A button if possible. So whoever raised your hand, just sneak that in, and we can address your question as soon as we get it. Anyway, sorry to derail. Okay. Here we go. Wait. Oh, right. Yeah. So you do have to use the question, but keep going, and please do use the Q&A button if you have a question. All right.
Okay.
Go on.
So to answer Stefan's question, the current pledge number we're working with, the gross number is 642,000. Okay. So what we do is take the 98.5% of that, yep, which is up about, well, 4% over the 21 projected and 6% increase over the 21 budget.
Yes,
it's amazing.
And you know, this again deserves a shout out to the congregation being that generous in these difficult times, and also to the stewardship committee that worked on not only working on this pledge numbers, but also having them in time for us to do planning. You know, I think you as the congregation has in the recent years started to pledge earlier, which makes our work so much easier. You know, if we don't have to assume what will still come in because people are not ready to pledge, right? I want to say thank you, especially as a finance committee person, that you know, knowing early what we can deal with makes our life so much easier. So pledge is up quite a bit. We can assume a limited open building, right? So we do assume that come September, we're going to have services. It's going to be, from what I understand, limited to that we might not rent it out for weddings and stuff like that, or for bigger gatherings until maybe winter or something like that. I'm not familiar with all the details, but we can assume at least a limited open building, which means that will already be a year where we have more activity in the building than in the financial year 20, where we had 4 months of complete pandemic lockdown. We already have confirmed summer rentals for this summer. It's a big income part for us, you know, with Powers and this, I forgot the name. Basic, yeah. With these two. And we can also assume an auction in spring, and we can assume a musical fundraiser for financial year 22. So these are all good assumptions. And so with all this, we can achieve a balanced budget. We don't have to assume any shortfall. We can have the staff fully at the UUA midpoint already by financial year 22, which I'm super glad about, because it means that going forward, of course, we're going to have to adapt salaries and all that, but we no longer have this pending thing that we have to do, which is going to be an ongoing cost every year, right? It's after this year, we're going to be at the point where we can maintain a fair payment to our staff. And after this, we still have some money left, which is great, of course. The things that we from the Finance Committee currently and together with the board are discussing, one, to use this money that we have left. One is during the pandemic, thanks to a lot of hard work from Ian and Nate and many others in the congregation, we have developed quite a bit of proficiency in digital ministry, right? We have now people that are dialing into our services from the Midwest and from all over, right? From other countries. I think I saw in the YouTube blog some login from Sweden at one point in time. So we developed quite a bit of digital ministry. But now that we go back into the building, I mean, Ian and Nate will be very busy to run, their normal job, the job they had before the pandemic. And so we have to think about that this is a unique point in time where we have developed a skill set that will definitely be super useful in the future for digital ministry and that we don't want to lose. So one of the areas that we want to invest some money, a moderate amount of money, is to just make sure that we can continue digital ministry, that we continue to develop the skill set, and that we now have the model where we do live in-person gatherings and still be there for the people that don't want to come because they are at risk, or people that want to stay with our community even though they are not in Belmont or close by, right? And I think I'm excited about that also because we can reach people and help people, right, that we might otherwise lose. And so this number comes from the idea that we back up Nate's job a little bit so Nate can continue to focus on digital ministry, that we pay some money to the new youth assistants. One of the candidates has digital, quite a bit of a digital skill set, and make this part of the job. So we want to be somewhat scrappy. We don't want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars right away, but I think there's some good ideas. An exciting line item. Then the other things we want to look at, some of the deferred maintenance. We just want to go through that again with the facility team, to see whether we can fulfill a few more of the original campaign promises on that front. And then last not least, that HVAC system, was a $300,000 thing, right? That we hit. And our building fund at that point was at about $50K. So what that tells us is that we have a year-long tradition to put $10,000 each year into this building fund so that if the boiler breaks or if the HVAC system breaks, we can replace it. That number has not been adopted, and over at least 10 years or 15 years. So what we have a task force under the leadership of John Howe that is looking into this, that is looking into all of our assets and coming up with a number that makes sense for us to put aside this year. But their work will most likely, be at this point later in the year, later in the calendar year, so next financial year. But we already know 10,000 is enough. So we also wanted to slowly build this contribution into our operational fund. So these are the three areas that we want to investigate for that money that we have from this very generous pledge drive. So again, here are the numbers. Martha, you want to explain any details on them, or?
Sure. So Stefan said the pledge drive was hugely successful this year. We came in 4% over even where the generous contributions for this actual year. And that's what's driven this whole budget. allowed us to increase the salaries as well as take on some of the other line items that we're suggesting here. The next item of income that is slightly variable is the offering income. We're hopefully going to hit $10,000 for this year. We projected $33,000 for next year, and that's based on where we actually were in 2020 or fiscal year 20 when we were in person. So the hope is that we'll rebound at least to the level that we were achieving before we shut down. Rental income, Stefan mentioned, we have locked in both a summer contract with Basic and with Powers. And then we have an ongoing yearly rental with Powers for the Johnson House. What we usually assume back in FY20 was there was $64,000 of income were the incidental rentals for weddings or memorial services or rental of the parish hall for some other. We've really not increased those line items, not being sure how things will play out with the pandemic going forward. So we've been conservative in this line item. Fundraisers, we have budgeted $30,000 from last year's auction will hit next year, and then $1,800 from the children's musical. And again, not knowing what the scope of the gatherings are going to be able to be in is being conservative in his estimates for income. There also next year will be an auction, but that will be raising money for the year ahead. So we're never raising money. We're never having an auction in the year that we're going to use that money. Investment income, what we have decided is there was always Stefan mentioned the $10,000 that went to the building fund from the investment. What we've done is collapse it all into the operating budget here. So we see it both in the income, and then you see on the right-hand side into the building fund, there's a $10,000 expense. So those two wash each other out. It's not a net increase at all to the budget, but we felt it was much more accurate to display it and include it as part of the operating budget. So that brought us to $825,000, almost $826,000 of income, which is extraordinary. Our expenses are largely driven by personnel. And as we said, we have been able to increase everybody up to the midpoint. The admin line is what includes the digital ministry. So we've included $8,000 there. And additionally, there are some online tools such as Zoom that we have now needed to pay for. So those represent the additional expenses in the administrative line over what we had budgeted previously. Other line items are essentially the same. And again, what this does is bring us down to almost a $9,000 income over expenses. But this is still a projection. This is still a draft budget. So what we will be doing between now and the annual meeting is fine-tuning this and deciding where the best places are to divide that up, whether it's to the building fund or more to digital ministry or more to the buildings and grounds line. There are a number of different line items where it could end up. But this is a really wonderful and optimistic picture of where we are and where we will be going next year. And if anybody has any questions.
Yes, I want to mention one quick thing before we have a question. The financial year 20 actuals, right? They incorporate 4 months of lockdown already, right? So the offering income, for example, there was 33,000, even though we are shut down for 4 months. I just want to put that out there, so that you see that we were somewhat conservative there with the income, because we do expect that our visitor numbers will most likely not be, immediately the same big numbers we had, and will slowly develop.
So two questions that popped on. We had Martha Spalding asked a little while ago about, we're in this really interesting moment where last year, the last auction, we're still waiting to realize some of the events that people have already paid for. So, just to maybe say a couple sentences about our optimism for this coming auction, and it's a pretty specific pickle that we and lots of other places are in. I don't know. It seems like, I know I'm waiting to do one of those events. I think people, just are kind of open to the idea of a strange sort of thing like that. I don't know if either of you. Oh, and Marion Westgate said she'll help coordinate people to run that. So I think that's when we said, all right, we can go ahead with it. I don't know if there's anything to add to that, Stefan or Martha, or that's probably enough of an answer.
I think we should turn that around in an advantage. I think this is great input. So what we should do is really run a lot of these dinners and all that leading up to the next auction, so people still remember how great it was, and give generously. So I think we should make an effort to really celebrate these.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then Miriam asked about the decrease in the.
Chris, before you go there,
sorry.
I'd like to add.
Yeah.
The fellowship committee is currently running the dinners and the get-togethers right now, and they're going extremely well. And I think if people are vaccinated in the most current information that we have, then we should be looking at moving forward.
Great. And then, Miriam asks about the decrease in the budget for RE. And I think it's just it's an interesting optic thing. So it's not actually a decrease. We have the new program, the Families Together, which had a large cost that first year we ran it to get some equipment and other things. That's what made for that $9,000 in FY20, and that's now sliced out into different places. So it's actually it's a similar, almost a level budget for RE. With that.
So if you would see the long-term development there, you would see the 9,000 being the outlier.
Right.
And we actually increased this somewhat, because the 5,700 includes some ways of having Nate not being there on Sunday mornings, and therefore can do some of the digital ministry stuff.
Yeah. And then Richard asks about the upkeep on uubelmont.org, or the web.
I think that should be an administrative, right? So we don't expect any changes there. Are there any more questions? Should we also show, the new salary picture, or right? So, or Martha, do you want to talk to that, or Lori, or? Because this is basically now the new salary structure for our staff, right? You can see there are, the level of increase is no longer the same for everybody, because we had different people were differently, some of them were further away from the midpoint than others, right? So this year we bring everybody to the midpoint. The fact that Wendy here in the RE assistant role has such a high increase is because she has actually higher work hours, because she will take on more administrative work for the youth group. So with a youth director being replaced basically by a youth assistant, or youth, how do we call it? It's going to be youth assistant. Right, a part-time job, and then also some more time for Wendy to take care of the administrative part of youth group. I think everything else is driven by the midpoint discussion. With the exception, of course, of Chris, who volunteered to to stay flat for this year so we can make all this happen. I want to mention that. Thanks, Chris. Good. Then we don't have that many questions. There's one more, right? Okay.
I think now people are just appreciating all of you all in leadership, and I will only underline it. Oh, and the nursery school hire. Yeah, so we're in the process of hiring the new nursery school person. Our beloved Denise retired after we went virtual, and Simon, I believe. Yeah, no, Simon's good. Simon's been above. Yeah, Simon's well taken care of.
Mhm.
Oh, and Ian is jumping in with an answer. Yeah, but again, we want to thank everybody who's the finance committee and Martha who have been putting in so much time.
Yes, but I mean, I clearly want to say, the way that the congregation steps up here, makes this job really easy, right? So I'm very humbled and grateful by the generosity of the people to make this place a special place, and so my thanks goes really out to everybody that gives.
And this isn't your only shot. We all are very available to answer questions all the time. We're all pretty deep in all these numbers. So if anything pops into your mind, feel free to reach out.
And I think we need to also thank Catherine Canfield and Susan Galley, who have run the stewardship campaign. They ran an excellent campaign. We'll say more about that during the annual meeting. But their fingerprints are all over much of this, and we are very grateful for their leadership as well as for the work of the whole committee. If there aren't any final questions, we'll bring this meeting to a close. Are there any final questions? I do want to say that if you'll just bear with me just one more minute, when the Zoom link is over, you will receive a Zoom email. And it will ask two questions. Did we cover the information you were interested in better understanding? And that's the first question. And the second one is, if not, what information would you have us consider providing next time? We are very much in the midst of trying to figure this out. And given how few questions were asked, I have to think that by and large, the information that's being presented is what people are looking for. I want to say thanks to Judy Ranoff and Lori Graham and Stefan Frank and Martha Reed and Chris Jablonski for helping in terms of the conducting of this town hall. And then behind the scenes have been Ian Garvey and Janice Zazinski, who've made sure this has really worked well. Please put on your calendar to reserve in 3 weeks from today at the same time, 11 o'clock on June 6th, the annual meeting. We know that that's the same day as the high school graduation, but we think we're going to be early enough in the fact that we're on Zoom, we won't be competing with them. You will start to receive information about the town hall this week and a chance to register. To echo what has been said, this is really good news, and it's good news because the people of this congregation make it good news. And assuming positions of leadership is a whole lot more gratifying when we have good news to give than if we had to go back and say we're making cuts and we had some drastic things to deal with. But I think once this construction is completed, the condition of COVID seems to be improving, that we have a lot to look forward to. And I really look forward to seeing all of you in person. So thank you for joining us today and have a good Sunday. Bye-bye now.